Hey everybody, welcome to Bestie Book Reviews. I'm here with my bestie Mandy.
And I'm here with my bestie Jessica and narrator Carly Robins, who also narrates under CJ Bloom.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, so tell us before we get started. I know this probably is not on Mandy's questions, but you have the two names. What's the
I do.
difference between the two?
I would like to say that there was a grand plan, but there was not. And I wish I was smarter. So I started narrating, if you can believe this, 10 years ago. Back in actually, it's probably like 10 and a half technically, because it was back in 2014, but it was like, towards the end of the 2014 year.
Okay.
So about 10 and a half years ago. And at the time, I was an actor in New York, and voiceover work was like a side job for me. I was pursuing work on the stage, and I was getting small parts on like soap operas and maybe like a couple of indie films, and still thinking I was going to be able to make a living. Um, and voiceover kept sort of popping up in anytime I went to like an on-camera commercial audition, or I ran into casting directors or classes that I would take. And so I kept hearing it enough and kept trying to pursue it, but it was a very small insular um, like part of the business that was really hard to sort of break into. But I kept getting sort of like encouragement, and I kept feeling like they must be hearing something in my voice or my delivery or like my elocution or something that felt like it was a place that I should keep trying to pursue. And so I kind of fell into audiobooks as like one of those side jobs that you do where there are thousands of jobs just to try and like pay the bills. And I had gotten, at that point, it was like this really unique time in audiobook land. It was a very small window where Audible was still in its infancy. It was within just a year or two or something, a couple of years, where they had been purchased by Amazon. So they had all this money, and they were sort of like looking towards their new direction. And they were buying up every back title known in existence. And so I started working with an engineer. His name is Pete Rowan, and he's sort of what gave me my start along with ACX. And he would get like a book dump from Audible every month of like, let's say 15 to 20 books. And he would just sort of, with his like merry band of actors, New York actors, he would just cast. And then we would do the books, and then they would go off into whatever land. And so anything having to do with the nuts and bolts of the industry, I learned from him, or just sort of like waiting if there were other narrators in his studio, just sort of hearing from them how things worked. And everybody said you have to have a pseudo because nobody does romance under their own name. And that was it, because the idea was that in your theater or like professional acting life, you didn't want to it was still taboo, which is kind of bizarre to me to think that like romance is so taboo that like you were gonna tank your acting career.
That makes no sense. But
aren't the most like famous films, aren't they romances? But whatever, put a pin in that for the double standard or sort of like the nonsense. And I was like, I guess I have to come up with another name.
I love it.
And so I'm not even that creative. CJ is my name, Carly. J is my middle name, Joelle. And Bloom is my mother's maiden name, which normally you're not supposed to say because that's like your security questions, but it's not my security question, so it's okay. I did it all wrong. And I wasn't even strategic about it. So I would just sometimes get cast as CJ. No, not by my choice. They would just be like, this is a CJ title. And I'd be like, okay. And then I also started to get cast in romance, and some of my bigger hits were under Carly. And so I was just like, well, now this is a mess. Like, what am I supposed to do? Although CJ has only done romance, and Carly does all genres. But and so it was not even strategic in the slightest. So that was a very long answer to your very tiny question.
That's okay, because it made me think of something else. So you,
fantastic. Okay. But that's it. That's the story. So it's like it wasn't even planned or anything. And then I can't. And I'm just going to wrap it up. I cannot tell you how many times I go to a book event or I meet a fan, and they don't know I'm the same person, and yet they've listened to my voice in both but under both names, which is always, it tickles me when that happens.
Yeah, I think that's cute when that happens. It takes a minute to figure it out, but
Totally.
probably because their brain's like, this is telling me it's somebody else, even though the book is telling me, but even though it sounds the same.
I know.
Yeah,
It's such a strange thing in just authors in general. Most authors have a pen name.
Yeah.
I always find it so bizarre because you're like, everybody has another persona. I don't know what's real, what's not real. Who are you? Who am I talking to? How am I supposed to address you? How am I find it hard even amongst my colleagues. I'm like, what do you want me to call you as? Or like, am I going to
Yes.
say something that I'm not supposed to say? Or
Mhm.
I don't know. But for me, and I can only speak for me, I like the authenticity of being myself. I have only had people respect both names.
Mhm.
And so I just, I'm
Yeah.
interchangeable with them. Yeah.
With the name thing, it kind of throws me off because you met Stacy, my business partner, when we were in, so we have the book box company,
Yeah.
and I will send a thing out to an author, their contract in their name, thinking that that is their name, and then they send it back to me with a different name, and I'm like, oh, that's a pen name. So what do I, and like one of them I'm going to be hanging out with, Mandy and I will be hanging out with them in July, and I'm like, what do I call you? I don't know what to call, like, what are you going by? I don't know. So it just makes me.
Can I tell you, it has caused me to be a stressed introducer. Like when I see somebody, I purposely don't introduce them to somebody because I am so worried I'm going to mess up. So it winds up becoming like a thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's crazy. And actually, pretty much everybody has a pen name. I don't really know of anybody who uses their real name.
The funny thing is Mandy and I have somebody who does. Do you remember when I had this conversation with Karen, Mandy?
Yes.
Yeah. I messaged Karen Crompton is an author friend of ours out of Australia.
Okay.
And I was like, so is that your pen name? She's like, do you think I would have chosen Karen for my pen name? I was like, I don't know. She's like, no, it's my name.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Yes.
Brilliant.
There
Love
are
it.
several authors that who use pen names who didn't start out with pen names, but then had like scary encounters.
I know.
And
It's sad when that. I know. And same with, I'm sure some narrators, particularly male narrators, get a lot of aggressive sometimes, or depending on what spaces they're in. I know that can get those lines can get blurred. Yeah.
And there's a few male narrators that we know that have been on the channel that we know what their actual names are, but when we're in a setting, I mean, that's not who they are to me. They're their pen name to me. So when we're at an event or whatever, that's who that is to me. And I'm sure they just don't necessarily want it out there. But okay, you mentioned soap operas. Tell me you were in Days of Our Lives and tell me you were hanging out with Jensen Ackles.
Oh my God, I wish. I love Jensen Ackles. But I was a big fan of I didn't watch him on the soap opera days. Maybe I missed that. Days of Our Lives was an LA show, so I was not on that one. I was on all the New York ones. Okay. I don't know if there was a New York one that I didn't get. I never made it on All My Children. That was the only one that I never made it on. But I did like Under Fives and background, and it was like something I did at least once or twice a month for across all of the different soap operas. And they actually, back in the day, they had studios like in Midtown, which was crazy before they even, moved outside of the city. And now I think they're like in Connecticut or I don't even know if they hire actors anymore because they had to, cut down on costs so much. But that was a consistent income for me. That was like great money. It's how I got into AFTRA, which was the union. And then in fact, that's how I got grandfathered into SAG-AFTRA, was because the unions merged and I had gotten soap opera work. So I know one of those crazy like administrative kind of things about being an actor in New York, but it was like a consistent gig for me, and I loved it. Supernatural. I was a huge fan of Supernatural.
Oh yeah, they
and he
filmed
has
it.
that. And I watched The Boys too. Do you watch The Boys?
I haven't. I mean, I've seen clips of Jensen in that, but I haven't. Supernatural.
He's not a great character. He's not a great character in that one.
But that's okay. We like them when they're bad anyway. But so Supernatural was filmed right across the border here in Canada. So I'm in Washington. I'm in the Washington side.
Okay.
But several of the actors actually live here. My daughter goes to school with kids of one of the actresses. there's Misha Collins is we see him in town all the time. He's
Oh
just
my God.
down the road. Yeah.
That's crazy.
So
I
there's a few.
heard that they didn't Jensen and Padalecki, didn't they marry like guest stars on the show or something like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well, their wives have been on the show. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. I mean, like what a
Yes.
small world of how your life develops and then
Mm-hmm.
becomes around those two iconic characters.
Yeah. Well, I think Jensen and his wife had met on another movie setting back in the day or TV show, but she was also on there when they
Fair
were.
enough. No,
Yeah.
he's so ridiculously talented and has not aged at all. Oh my God.
Yeah,
I
he's
wish.
ridiculously talented.
I wish. I know. I think
Yeah.
the New York actors have a different kind of look than the LA actors, but
Yeah, I can see that. He's a Texas boy. That's why he's so good looking.
Maybe. But I think he
Okay.
also went to LA. He has a very LA look. Okay, yeah, sorry. Back to
Sorry.
It's okay. So, our
Yeah.
first question.
First official one.
What are you most known for? Like, is there a particular book or series that people would recognize you from, or your voice from, I should say?
It's a great question. That's so impossible for me to answer. I will say that the ones I maybe like sign the most books for are there I would say there's a couple of them. So one, I did a book back in 2018, The Kiss Quotient,
Yep.
which wound up being, I think, the sort of start of this movement for like I think they call it like own voices, where authors are writing about their personal experiences. And so the character in that was on the autism spectrum. And so it was a very authentic to the author herself, her own personal experience. And then it was just sort of like a very reverse kind of Pretty Woman theme and stuff. So that book kind of had like a really big life that year. So that was a big one. And I still get a lot of opportunities to sign for that. I sign a lot of Max Monroe titles. I think I was probably pretty known. I did Tapping the Billionaire, which was early in my career, and it was so laugh out loud funny. And I was like, I didn't know they made books like this.
That's awesome.
I know. And those gals have become friends since then. And, I've been really lucky that they've hired me multiple times. So, I hope that relationship continues. I would say I'm known for the T.L. Swan books, the Miles High books. I sign that a lot. I think The Takeover is a book that people refer to or tell me that they listen to multiple times because it's so laugh out loud funny for them. And Rebecca Yarros, that's another author, particularly since she's had, skyrocketing fame for the fourth series. But I've been lucky to narrate quite a few of her contemporary romance. And so I think because of that, it kind of got swept up in the umbrella of her writing. But she has been a favorite for a long time. Her very first book I narrated was one of the first books I narrated, actually, was in the first sort of like year that I started narrating. That was the Flight and Glory series. And I wept reading that. And I was like, who's this writer? Like, what am I reading? What's happening here? And so that was just such a lovely surprise to have had that relationship now for so many years. I don't know. Can I throw it back on you? Have you listened to me? Do you even, what would you say?
Lots. Like to the point where I'm like, Born for Silk.
I was thinking Powerless by Elsie Silver.
Oh, yeah.
How
could I forget Elsie? Yeah. I just feel so lucky to have narrated for her as many times as I have. That's a newer, Powerless came out, so funny. So I did Powerless. And sometimes when you're cast, particularly if it's like a new to you author, or this is sort of like their debut series, or maybe their debut series they didn't do an audio for, but they're maybe going to go back or something. And so I got so much attention from that book. And then I met her literally like within the same month at Readers Take Denver a couple of years ago, not the bad Readers Take Denver that everybody, I didn't go to that one. But so we met in person, and it was just so lovely to watch her then, also ascend into, the behemoth that she is now. So that's always so nice.
Yeah.
I wonder what other ones. Oh, I sign a lot of The Graham Effect by L. Kennedy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And some let me think, who else do I don't know. Any other ones? I'm sure I'm missing tons of people.
I know. I mean, I've listened to so many that I couldn't tell you exactly. My Kindle's like over on the bed over there, so if I can pull that up, I'd be like, oh yeah, this one, this one, this one, this one.
And then this and this and this one. That I will say
Exactly.
another one that I get a lot is because I did the whole series minus one book that was male was Chloe Leese, the Bergman brothers. That was a really pleasant surprise. She's an extraordinary writer. The books were so lovely. The characters just really awesome, and so unique. So
yeah,
that's another one I would say that I get known for.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just looking through my Audible list.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell me if any are mine.
Hyper Rain. You've done.
Oh,
some
I loved
Hyper
it.
Rain.
I've done quite a few. Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Love them.
And Tijan.
Yes, I have done quite a few.
Yeah. So
They're
there's
always so epic. I know.
Yeah.
You're in a lot.
I'm in a lot.
Yeah. Do you know how many books you have under your belt?
So I have narrated over 1,000.
Wow. That's why it's hard to be like, I
know.
It's
so hard. It is so hard. And also because it's like some things go in like trends or waves. And so sometimes I try to see like, oh, this one, when I meet fans at book events, that's sort of how I can gauge what they've listened to or what, because then I can ask people like, what are you listening to? Because I don't always sort of get a sense of what I'm known for or what people are responding to. But sometimes that gets skewed by the authors that are at the event. And so sometimes it's sort of hard to tell. But that's always sometimes a good time to be like, what do you listen to?
Yeah.
You might like this.
I know.
Like that.
I know when we go to an event and we're looking at the narrators, we look at the narrators compared to the authors that are there. So what authors are here that I can take a book for, that the narrator is also there, that they can both sign that book at the same time. So that definitely is probably going to skew it a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. You want to try and make sure that you can get everybody at the same time.
Especially if you're traveling and have to take in the books with you, and that's weight in your luggage, and we want to bring more back, and that's really important. I'll leave underwear behind if I have to. So but I won't leave my pillow behind.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Who needs underwear? Nobody does. It's fine.
It's all good. It's all
totally
good.
fine.
So what are some of the challenging aspects of narrating a book?
Well, this may sound boring, but for me, it's like my body. How I sound on that particular day. Am I fighting? I have terrible allergies. I've had them my whole life. I've done everything. I've done shots. I've done under the tongue drops. I take allergy medication. I just am one of the, I just think I have an oversensitive immune system. So it's like allergen.
Yeah.
And it like cuts me down. Yay. Let's just make her completely congested. So I feel like I'm always sort of battling something there. And then of course, just you're petrified of any sort of cold or something. My stomach makes a ton of noises. It's a very, very noisy stomach. It's embarrassing. You get like a really, you're like, I didn't realize like the noises my body makes, and you have to get really comfortable with that as like one of those just surprising aspects about the job. So I think that that's one of the more stressful parts is like, particularly, and I hope this doesn't come off wrong, but like, I love to work. I am so excited that I get to do this work. And so I record like 40 hours, like a real 9 to 5 job. I do it all the time. I narrate usually between like 120 and 130-ish, somewhere in that range, 135 books a year. So I'm doing like 10 to 12 books a month. Sometimes more. It's crazy. Sometimes they're solo, sometimes that's multicast, sometimes that's, like a co-narration, like a dual narration. Although I will tell you, the woman always winds up usually getting like 75%. So the guy comes in for like his cool 2 hours and I've got like 8.
And then everybody it's like, oh, this guy who did this book, and nobody's paying attention to the woman who's doing the book. It's so wrong. Yes. Yep.
I see you. So for me, the name of the game is efficiency and like,
Mhm.
making sure all of this is ready to go so that I don't get behind on things. Because I also want to meet my deadlines and, be graceful for my co-narrators and the production staff. And, everybody's meeting their deadlines, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to be the one that tanks the entire thing.
No.
So no, nobody wants to be that
No.
person. Nobody wants to be. I mean, maybe some people are. They are those people, but
Yeah.
they don't care. I care.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, so I am just like the body as the machine is the thing that stresses me out the most.
Yeah. Yeah. We've seen a author recently talking about someone not making her deadline and how frustrating that was.
Right.
So, mhm.
I mean, listen, we all. I think to give people grace, which is what I try my hardest to do.
Mhm.
I've been in this business a long time, so I've seen just about anything come up on the production side with a co-narrator, with an author, with a production house, any sort of part of that could maybe not go well. Sometimes you have a production thread. I've had them that are like 150 back and forths, and you're like,
Ugh.
I'm gonna kill myself. And then
Yeah.
sometimes it's like two.
Yeah.
So, it's just the way it goes. So I to give people grace, I don't know that people really understand the intricacies and complexities of what it is to make an audiobook.
Mhm.
And so I think they accept things without realizing how challenging that really is. And
Mhm.
then what's so sad is like we're all in our little boxes, and we're not in studios talking to people. And so it's very easy to maybe ignore that email because you're feeling some shame or embarrassment.
Mhm.
Um, and so you don't communicate and say, I'm so sorry, my kid got sick, or, the dog was up all last night and I have no voice today, or whatever the personal reason you're like, I'm just going to be a day late,
Mhm.
which goes so far with people. And
Yeah.
instead, people just don't reply, or, they just sort of fall off the face of the earth. And you're like, what happened to you?
Yeah.
Um, and I've had that happen on so many ends, and I realize life is busy for everybody, but I think there is a big misunderstanding about how the challenge of the work that we do.
Mhm.
It seems so easy. Like I could read a book. Everybody says that all the time. I have a great voice. I do character voices for my kid
It's
when
not
I'm
the same.
yeah, when I'm going, reading to them at night. And I don't think they understand what it means to sit and narrate, a 6 to 14-hour book. Yeah.
Mhm.
And the challenges that come with that. Even just like the tech side. There have been times in my life where like the chokehold of fear because there would be like some weird buzzing and I'm just like I can't even explain the dread
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
comes from being like, "I don't know what's going on, and I don't know what to do," and usually I'm just yelling at my husband, and he's like, "I don't know what to do," but I'm like, "Fix it," and he's like, "You know it better than I do," and it's like, "But I
Just
don't!
make it better.
Just
Yeah.
fix it!" Now I have a bevy of engineers that I can panic-stricken reach out to, but,
Yeah.
um those kinds of things, like, you just a lot of things out of your control,
Mhm.
and that's very hard to navigate, particularly if you haven't been in this for very long, or if you didn't even learn the nuts and bolts of the business itself with an engineer, with a director, with a
Right.
studio to sort of know, like, this is what the standard is, and you're trying to replicate that in your home studio on your own, where you're running your own session, you're doing your own, you're an engineer, you're a director, and you're the narrator.
Mhm.
And so it's very challenging, particularly I think for up and coming narrators where everybody has a home studio. That wasn't always the case.
Yeah, and not
Um,
all of them have been through all the they haven't gone through everything the same way. They've got their start on TikTok or something, and
Totally.
then
And they were like,
yeah,
"I'm
it's
just doing fun things and I'm calling myself a narrator," but they've never done a book.
yeah,
Great, like manifest it. Like, well, people come into show business from who knows what your background is, right?
yeah,
But
yeah,
at the same time, to then have the responsibility for doing the book, particularly if it's also an author who maybe doesn't know what they're doing because this might be their first or maybe even their second
right.
audiobook. It's just like everybody's trying to navigate something they don't know. And it's so sad, but it's part of human nature to like pull away instead
Mhm.
of jump in and say, because that's ego, or maybe it's just you're self-conscious or the fear to say, or vulnerability, right?
Yeah.
To say, like, I don't know what I'm doing. I kind of fucked up here. It's going to take me a little bit longer. I didn't know it was this hard.
Yeah.
So to give people grace, I sometimes think that maybe is what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Do you have any funny or memorable moments from recording a book?
Let me think about that. So back in the day, is it funny when I record by myself?
I know.
That's the thing. A lot of recording happens by yourself, right?
So much. I mean, there are days where like I said, I have a very active stomach. So there are days where I'm like, shut up. I have like 5 pages to go and I don't know what is going on with you, but like, shut up. I'm verbally assaulting my own self. I do that a lot. I will say, like, back in the day when I get to go into a studio or things like that, just like shooting the shit with people, it's so funny, but like the voiceover world, which is totally separate from audiobooks, and most of the voiceover people I know can't stand audiobooks because it's way too much time. But a lot of them do like improv, like people who do commercials or promos or sort of even like character voices and stuff like that. They come from a lot of comedy background. And so sometimes going into those, you're just like peeing your pants. I don't even remember half the time of stuff we talked about. I will say that back in the day when I started back at Pete Rowan's studio, and I would work with his nephew, Kyle, who is now an engineer in his own right. Last I heard he was working for Blackstone, but he was my engineer, and we would get into like super intimate, spicy scenes, and sometimes we just would have to stop because they would be so silly. And one of the things that became one of our inside jokes was birthday anal, because that was like they would like talk about it in the book, where it would be like, not now, but like for a birthday. We'll do birthday anal. And that became like a thing. And so for us, it became like sort of a running joke. We'd be like, birthday anal.
Birthday anal. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
So that was something funny. But mostly it's just like, I would say like my body noises.
Because for sure the microphone picks up on that, because that microphone picks up everything.
Everything. And so like your mouth makes weird noises, but my stomach is like pew all the time. And
yeah, I'm sure
system.
the nurses, like if you had to have a surgery, they would probably love to listen to your stomach because it's so active. Sounds like it's working.
I'd like to say some people think like maybe that means like I have to go poop or I'm gonna have to pass gas. None of that happens. It's just really active. It's just very
really
active.
Working.
Just really working.
Yeah, just working.
So funny.
Yeah.
I sometimes then fantasize like I would be an inventor and I could like come up with like some sort of like vest I could wear that would like stifle the sound. And then and then I was like, what is the market for the person who would need to buy that? Like how many narrators or like podcasters, I guess, although it's not really the same because they have car horns going off in the background.
Yeah.
Like would there actually be a business if I were to invest in this? So sometimes I have those kinds of fantasies where I, like ruminate on what kind of like, I don't know. I sometimes think like, when you're going for an x-ray and you have to put on like the metal, like I wonder,
vest.
The vest, would that muffle my stomach noises?
But like, I'm assuming, especially in the summertime, it would be hotter than Blue Blazes with that on, and
I'd
you
have
can't
to
have AC.
Nudie patootie. I'd have to be a nudie patootie. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, for sure. With ice packs. So yeah.
Really attractive. Everybody wants to see what that experience is like.
Yeah, that's funny. No,
they wouldn't. I don't think
you
so.
could build in ice packs on the underside that would just be right up against the body.
God, that just sounds so unpleasant.
Yes, doesn't it? Yeah.
So how do you handle when you are
we're back. Serious
multiple
question.
characters?
I'm sorry. Ask me one more time. I was making a joke, and so I missed the front half of that question.
Yeah.
It's okay. How do you handle when there's multiple characters that you're voicing?
Oh, I think so. This is one of those skill sets that just winds up becoming technique the more times you do it. I cannot tell you, it never ceases to surprise me that there will be like a scene and there's like a family dinner and
Mhm.
the author actually doesn't tell you who is saying what, and you're like, and
Oh.
it's like a throwaway line, like you can't guess which character, and you're just sort of like, "Arr." um, happens often. So
Mhm.
I actually do a little bit of, and this might sound a little like actor woo wooey whatever, but in general, when I'm approaching the work, I try to come up with a mental image, almost like a painting. So like I'm looking at a canvas and I'm sort of like painting in my mind the picture when they're in their house or they're looking at like the outfit that they've put together, or they're describing someone, or they're in a coffee shop, or I try and picture sort of what that is so that when they say I turn to look at somebody, I kind of turn my body a little bit, not enough that it makes a difference sound wise so that I'm totally like off the mic, but enough that I'm actually turning and they're talking to this person here. And so if it's a dinner table, I try to imagine, as an example, the people where they're sitting and sort of how they're talking to each other. And if I've done enough of my work, then they each kind of take a sort of trope, like
Mhm.
the brother who's, maybe more of the alpha or quiet or something like that. And so I can kind of do some really quick physicalities, even if it's sort of mostly mental, to kind of give them a distinguishing factor in terms of how I deliver the line. And that's kind of how I work. So I create that mental image and then I sort of go from person to person in my head. And that's how I try and sort of set the scene to give them some distinction. So
Mhm.
that's as if they're really having a conversation. And I also, changing your character voice isn't always about the pitch. It's about the delivery, where it sits in your mouth, if they talk fast, if they whisper, do they speak louder, do they talk faster, do they uptalk? There are other things that you can do to have a variation to distinguish people, even if you don't necessarily want to change the vocal range,
Mhm.
like the timbre or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you made
So
me think
how
of some.
far
Yeah. Ooh,
Oh,
multiple
sorry, Mandy.
questions.
Good.
how far ahead do you pre-read when you're recording? Like, do you do like just a little chunk at a time? Do you read like several chapters?
So I will say that when my process for this has changed drastically from when I started. And I think that's like anything that you do every single day. You just like shed the things that no longer work for you because your
Hmm.
technique has gotten so much stronger. You don't need it anymore. Um, I I know this winds up sometimes becoming like a big debate in the narrator community. But the reason I think it's such a big debate is because there is a fear that the craft of narration will get lost when newer people come in who don't have the same training. Like I said, they went into a studio, they met people, they had like interactions to sort of see how other people work. And instead of, somebody on the internet with no prior acting background, let's say, decides, oh, I think I want to be a narrator. I think that's great, personally.
Mhm.
Come to the work however you want. But if we're gonna be truthful and honest with, depicting of these characters and the emotional journey, particularly in romance, right? Because that's all about vulnerabilities and, how you come to love someone and love yourself. Uh, However your prep works, great. I don't need a lot anymore. There's every project is a little bit different. If there is a lot of pronunciations or accents or things like that, that require that's like a technique part of the business of like getting whatever that voice is that's going to work. But I don't I'm trusting the work the way that I'm going to start from the very first page and then narrate that line and then narrate the next line and then hope that it builds from there. So I don't need to know, and in fact I find my work is better not knowing any big reveals, um, unless it's something, there've been a couple of times I've done like a thriller or something, and then they have the killer's voice in the beginning, and then you find out who the character is at the end. But that ruins it if you're doing that character voice in the beginning, because then everybody's gonna be like, "That's the same character.
Yeah.
That was
Mhm.
Mrs. Winslow," or whatever her name is, right?
Right.
And so instead, you are just doing, like, you're servicing the book for the way that it works, and so you're doing it as the listener in the same way that I am as the narrator. Does that make any sense? So,
Mhm.
like, I'm starting from the beginning, and I'm taking it step by step by step, and I'm discovering the same things as my characters are discovering them, and I think maybe just because I've done so many books, they're all basically the same. Nobody's in reinventing the wheel for how story structure works.
Right.
And so I think I just sort of I'm taking it from that moment with the eye on sort of where this might be leading, or, you know, that kind of thing. Does
Mhm.
that make sense? I hope.
Yeah, for
Okay.
sure.
Whew.
Yeah.
Okay. No, it's fascinating. The whole process of audiobooks is
Oh,
quite fascinating.
I love it. I could talk about it for hours, truthfully,
Mhm.
because I think that there's just it's the same. I actually equate audiobook narration to the closest other medium that I have found has been like a play for me.
Mhm.
Um, I had always wanted to be a stage actress. That was like my lifetime goal. Um, and to be, I will never get cast in any of these roles. I just wouldn't. I mean, I don't look
Mhm.
like them. I don't, you know what
Mhm.
I mean? There's just too many factors, age or where they live or how they comport themselves or things like that, right? But I can play them just by my voice, and I think that also just shows us how sort of like universal the emotional spectrum is. Everybody's had an experience similar or adjacent or the exact same. Um, and so I find the same emotional journey to be, sort of present in all of these stories. And that's something that I can do, with my
Mhm.
eyes closed. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a while ago, I think it was like last summer, we asked our viewers what types of questions they would want to ask narrators.
Yeah.
And one that came up, I felt really weird asking male narrators this question, but for some reason, the female narrators, this doesn't seem
Mhm.
like as awkward. So it's just, do your family and friends listen to your audiobooks? And it feels weird asking like the
Yeah.
male narrators that, because it's like, I don't know, but female narrators, it doesn't feel like so weird that your friends and family would listen to you, but for
I
the
would hope
males,
not.
it
I will tell you.
does. Isn't
So,
that, I
I
know that's probably weird, but
I don't think no, I 100% understand exactly where you're
Mhm.
coming from, and it's so funny. I have a sister-in-law who is obsessed with romance, refuses to listen to me. She's like, "Absolutely not. I'm so
Yeah.
grossed out even knowing that that's what you do." Um,
Oh.
no, but in like how it pertains to her way, not she's
Yes.
thrilled that I do it.
Yeah.
And we can talk about it, and in fact, she loves that part, but
That's
to make
funny.
it personal, like, for her experience, she's like, "Absolutely not."
Yeah.
Um, but I will say that, like, no, not one person listens to, it's maybe, certainly not for romance. Um, it's still a taboo subject, it feels like
It
somehow it
shouldn't be, but it does. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
is. I don't know why.
Mhm. I
Like
think for a lot of people though with romance, I think that somebody who doesn't read it, somebody coming in from the
yeah.
outside, they look at a romance book and they think it's erotica, and just straight up, there's no plot, there's no nothing, and we're just going. And that's not what the majority of it. That is not what it is.
But I would argue, aren't those people, like, watching porn? Which is not even about the emotional side?
Shoot,
Like,
not even
I
that.
don't
Like watching like Game of Thrones or something that has just as much in it as one of the books that we read,
and
if
it
not
has
more.
incest!
Yes. Thank you very
The
much. But
main
incest gets
plot
banned
point
on
is
on
incest.
Amazon. Mhm.
I just
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I mean, I do know what it is, right? Of course, it is considered to be a female-only
Yes.
sort of genre, and that is always maligned. It has yet to sort of elevate past that, sadly.
Yeah.
I think somebody, I've mentioned this before. I have a daughter. She's young. She's very young. She's 5.
Mhm.
And somebody once said to me, like, would she be embarrassed, or, like, this is what her mom does or something? And I was like, I I would hope she wouldn't be, first of all,
Mm-hmm.
but I would also hope that I would be a trusted resource to embody what healthy love looks like,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what I see as the basis of I mean, everybody, of course, there are, things about the romance genre, places that people have spicy scenes, not always super comfortable, right?
No. Mm-mm.
Or like having 20,000 multiple orgasms a night, probably not possible.
No.
Maybe for some people, bodies are different. Who knows? I'm not judging. But like for the majority of people, probably not possible. So
Mm-hmm.
put all that aside. But at the heart of it, right? Two people coming together to work through their own baggage so that they can love themselves and be open and available to loving another person and to be vulnerable with them and to want to build a life with that person. How not every single person on the planet would benefit from that. It just boggles my mind. And so
Mm-hmm.
I to have it be diminished to something salacious is heartbreaking to me.
Yeah.
And something that you know, I really try at the event that we saw one another at, we were on a panel and somebody said, I think they were asking like, if you read a spicy scene, do you then have to go and like masturbate, or do you have to go and then like have sex with your partner because you were so turned on or something like that? And that's not the first time that I have
Yeah, I
heard
know, but I'm like,
that. But
A little inappropropriate.
a little
I
bit.
think,
A little bit.
but also I think this is actually emblematic of society recognizing sex for that reason, that it's something salacious or it's something without emotion or merit behind it, that
Mm-hmm.
the act itself is just for self-gratification, not for anything aside of that. And that's the antithesis, I think, of what a romance book is. the
Mm-hmm.
the sex is great, but what they're really looking for is the human connection. And so somebody else on the panel made a sort of like sassy, funny comment. And I was like, wait a second, guys. And I really brought it back and I said, first of all, that's diminishing our role as a professional,
Yep.
that somehow we're belittling the experience of what these two people are coming together as, and we're treating it as if it's, exploitation.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. And two, ultimately, if we're doing our job right, it's about the intimacy and vulnerability of two people coming together. It's not about the end result of, bodily pleasure. And so I say it all the time whenever I'm asked or I'm in these kinds of situations, because I think that is so important for what it is, which is truly about the human connection. And can two people really put aside all of the things that
Mm-hmm.
are roadblocks for their ability to be vulnerable with another person? So, yeah. One of the problems.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to the person who was like, "Well, won't your daughter be embarrassed?" So
Yeah.
I'm curious
Yeah.
if that person has children, because
Yeah.
children, when they become teenagers, will be embarrassed by their parents regardless.
No matter what
Like,
you do.
Let
it
me tell you,
doesn't matter
I
whether it's
I
your job or how you dress or the way
Yeah.
you eat your food or how you order your food.
or just
Like,
talk. Sometimes it's just like, just mom, don't talk like that, or something. I hear
yes.
that kind of stuff all the time.
Mhm.
I More than anything, I want to be a trusted resource, because already she is hearing things from kids at the playground. She doesn't understand sex, right? But she
Yeah.
understands a little bit of gender. That's
Mm-hmm.
something that's talked about. They're not going to the bathroom together anymore. She can't just like take her clothes off in front of people anymore.
No, can't just run around topless.
She would like to, I think.
Yes.
She sometimes
Yeah.
doesn't understand why,
Yeah.
but she's already starting to get, societal norms put
Yes.
on her, and she doesn't always understand why they exist that way.
Mm-hmm.
Or why some people are more embarrassed about things, or they don't
Mm-hmm.
do things the way she does, right? For her, she doesn't have any of those self-conscious kinds of
Yeah.
things. She wants to shower with people. Like, she doesn't
Yeah.
understand
Yeah.
why that's taboo.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to be the trusted person, and I would welcome her reading romance stories, because I would certainly want that over porn or,
Yeah. Yeah.
other things that don't have any emotional connection to the intimacy between people. Or like, I was sort of going through my head, maybe this is getting a little too personal here, but I was going through my head like, what if she asked me, or any young person, frankly, was like, when you're with a new person and you're figuring out sexuality between the two of you, I'm going to be so embarrassed that I don't have a lot of experience. And I was trying to play out, this is what goes through my mind. Welcome to what my brain is like, people. I was going through the fantasy in my head of how that conversation would go. And what I settled on, which is, you're actually going to be embarrassed with every new person, because every person's body is different. They may have had so much experience prior, but they never had that experience with you. And
Exactly.
how
Mhm.
you react to things and what makes you feel good is going to be different. So
Mhm.
it's not about that, it's about your comfort in your own body being able to communicate with somebody else. And
Mhm.
I feel like that is romance. That is
Yeah.
everything
Mhm.
that this community tries to talk about, which is be comfortable talking about those kinds of things, get past whatever you can get past so you can have honest communication,
Mhm.
because that's the only way forward, because every person's body is different. It's
Yeah.
just the way that it is, and it's always gonna be embarrassing, and it's
Mhm.
never gonna be about, because maybe I didn't have it. I never felt like embarrassed that I didn't have a lot of experience. I just sort of
Mhm.
felt like, this was just my time to like figure it out with this person. But
Yeah.
I never felt like, because I hadn't done it, I don't know, there was like a thing like, until you were no longer a virgin kind of thing, but that never bothered me. But I know it does for
No.
some people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know why it should. I think that's actually a really cool thing. To have found that person early on and not have to go through the whole process of, you know, dealing with others.
Figuring it out.
So
Yeah.
figuring it out, yeah. But I do think having that open communication, that dialogue with your daughter is very important, because my daughters are 15 and will be 18 here in a few days. And I'm the first person they come to after they've had a date. Like, oh, mommy, kiss me. Like, I'm the, we have this open dialogue of what is happening.
Yeah.
These are our expectations of you, but if things go sideways, I need to know right away so that we can go and take care and do what we need to do, or those kinds of things. But I think just always having that open communication. I want my daughters to come to me. My son's a different matter. He's like his father, but he doesn't talk much. But anyhow, like it's especially with the girls. I like having that. I want them to tell me when they're Twitter pated over a boy, or that whole thing. Like, we want to talk about it. So that open communication is important with your kids.
Because their friends
Right.
are going to only tell them nonsense. They're going to tell them
Exactly.
things that aren't true.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah. Anyway. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes.
No, I was just gonna say, I feel like that you have another calling of like some motivational speaking. You're very eloquent in your presentation of this.
Yeah.
Oh,
It,
thank
it's
you.
very powerful that more
Oh,
women need to hear what you have to
Yes.
say, I think.
oh, thank you for saying that. Oh my goodness.
Well, you're welcome, but it's
Yeah.
just true.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's lighten things up a little bit. What do
Okay.
you like to do in your free time?
I bake and cook and dream about food all the time.
Okay.
100%. I
Yeah.
I I like going to grocery stores. That's actually a fun pastime for me. Um, I like going to specialty stores. I like going to farmers markets.
Oh
I
yeah.
like I like watching cooking videos on social media. That's when my algorithm changes and I'm getting schlock and I'm like, "Food!" I talk to my phone. I say, I'm like, "Food! Food! Cooking!" Hoping
Yes.
that it hears so that things get to change a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, I was late to the pandemic sourdough starter, but I have one now,
Oh,
and
good.
I
Yes.
thank God. I know
Mhm.
I was gonna be
Yeah.
ejected from, like,
Yeah.
humankind.
Yeah.
It's life-changing. I I like to bake breads a lot. I try,
Mhm.
to make almost like a weekly challah. We're Jewish, but not that that has much to do with anything except that it's a nice, like, touchstone to come back to, like, a
Yeah.
challah once a week. Everybody loves challah. Um, and, um, and it makes great French toast.
There you go.
Um, I one time in my previous life as an actor, I did a pilot for a cooking show called Grocery Tales because it's literally my favorite thing to do. Particularly when I travel, I like to go to grocery stores. And so like I was in we were in like Bermuda maybe or some other Caribbean island, and we went to the grocery store, I don't know, 20 something years ago, and they had an entire both sides aisle dedicated to hot sauce. And I was like, this island maybe has like 1,000 people on it, and they can devote this much
The hot sauce.
grocery aisle space to hot sauce. And I was like, must be a thing here. You think? You know, like
Maybe a little bit.
a little bit.
A little bit.
I just remember like walking up and down being like, what the
Yes.
mind boggled by it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so it gives me an idea, an open indication of what sells in, you know, wherever I am, what people are buying, who's shopping there. And things that I don't normally get to see. I love that. And then I dream about recipes all the time. So that is definitely my number one. I'm also a big walker. I love taking long walks. I live in Brooklyn, New York, so there's always a feast for the eyes. I go down one street and I'm like, I was just here last week. What? There's like a building here? Or they like tore something down? Like things change all the time. I just can't keep up. So I like that. I would say, you know, that kind of thing. But cooking is a big, big, big thing for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you talk about grocery stores, I always like my in-laws live my sister-in-law's in Virginia, my mother-in-laws are farther south, but we're from the West Coast. Like grew up West Coast, was in Alaska, like that's kind of where I'm at. So I go over there and I'm like, Piggly Wiggly's real? Like that's a real thing? It wasn't just something in that show or that book I read. Like that's a real let's go check that out.
I know.
You know, there's just the names of
do you know Piggly Wiggly was one of the very first grocery stores.
But we don't have that over here.
I know. It's not a chain that made it everywhere. I know.
No,
I know.
no. Yeah. Well, and my husband, he is from Buffalo originally. So like he has like, you have to get this specific sauce and you have to have Frank's mustard and you have to have like all the, and I'm like, what the heck is that? Like, I don't even know because it's not a West Coast thing. It's an East Coast thing. So that I get some of that getting to travel and check out what other people do because these are things that I've only ever heard of and didn't even think was real until.
Right.
You know,
I love this kind of stuff. Sometimes when I go to book events, fans will bring me like region specific. I don't want something you made because I don't. That's just too weird for me. But I'll take a packaged food.
Yeah.
Professionally packaged food. And sometimes people will bring me things and I die over it, and then I get to try whatever their thing is that their little town or area is known for, and it just like tickles me. Yeah.
Yeah. My daughter was all excited because they have in Buffalo they have those sponge candies. They're chocolate on them, but they're hard and they're this weird hard sponge on the inside. And
like honeycomb?
What?
That's a British thing, honeycomb.
No, I don't know. I'll have to look them up and I'll send them to you.
Okay.
But they're made right there in Buffalo. And my husband's aunt brought them to the kids a couple years ago. It's all my daughter talks about anymore. I have to order them directly out of Buffalo and get them shipped here on special occasions for her.
She sounds like me. I have done just that, where I've tried something somewhere and I'm like obsessed with it, and then I have to order a huge amount for no apparent reason except to satisfy whatever's going on in my brain that I need it like immediately. I 100% get that feeling and enjoy it. I embrace it. Oh my God, that's hysterical. Yeah.
This is also the same kid that sends Mandy and I cooking recipes into our Instagram constantly.
Add me to the list.
Yeah.
Amazing.
All right. Do you have any upcoming projects or something you're currently working on that you could tell us about?
Whew, this was going to be one of those trick questions where am I allowed to say anything? First of all, I will tell you a couple of things. One, titles change a lot. So I never remember titles because they sometimes, from when I recorded them to when they get out in the world, who knows? Or sometimes I just get cast in untitled and then perform it, and then they do a title later. So I don't always remember titles, and that's the main reason. Secondly, I don't remember anything, and I have no idea when things are happening.
Okay. Fair enough.
The previous conversation that I do like 10 to 12, sometimes more books a month.
Yeah.
I will say I recently have had a really nice mix of some like publisher titles and indie titles. So I've got a a nice little whatever, and some were fiction, somewhere I have a thriller. So I've got like a nice mix of some things coming out, which is always nice because you never want to get burned out on any one thing where you're. I had to take a step away from like some dark stuff because I was like, I can't do another dark mafia. It's just, it was just too much.
You gotta have a palate cleanser in there once in a while.
Yeah, and then I got that Gianna Darling, my
Dark Fairy Tale?
My Dark Fairy Tale, and I was like, I think I have to do this one because she's a lovely writer, and it just had like anyway, and it was fantastic. So I'm glad I said yes. But things like that. So what do I have recently? I just finished. She seems to be a very lovely. This is her debut novel. Her name is Linnie Mack, and it's one of those like summer second chance romances on the beach in Cape May. I think that one is called Changing Tides. And it was lovely. It was so lovely. I did that.
That will be out May 6th. I'm just looking.
Fantastic. Awesome. You probably could look up things that have been announced, and that might be better for me to go by.
You just did Mr. Charming. Mr. Charming by Piper Rain just came out.
Oh, yes. You know what? So I think they did like 3 or 4 in that series, and I was always the side female characters. So it's like 20 different voices, and I have no idea what's going on with the rest of the book.
Oh, that's gonna be interesting.
It's like, right. I just come in and do my part. And I've met them before. They are lovely. So I, of course, will always be a, yes for them. But those books are so fun. But I'm just the side characters. Let's see. Do I have anything else?
That series was really fun, though, how they had so many narrators doing the voices. And then like it was really cool to listen because then like Jessica was saying, like you get to that last book and then you're still hearing the characters, their actual voices from the beginning. So that was fun.
I know.
As a listener.
I think those books are really challenging, because schedules, that's just like that many more narrators to figure out how they're going to fit it into their schedule. And you having that small window of time because you want to try and get the whole thing done around the same time so everybody can communicate. I think that's challenging. And then I think on the back end to like put all those files in order, I think that's challenging. So I applaud people when they're able to make it come together because I don't think it's so easy to do. Back in the day, they would just hire us all and we'd go into the studio and I'd be like, hey, what's up? And like you get to like chit chat with your friends and make dirty jokes or whatever, and then like go home and then it's all put together because we were all in the same room. But it never happens. I know.
And there was like, that had to have been quite the tight turnaround because they did like 4 books in under a year.
Oh, I know, because they kept showing up in my calendar, and I was like, another one? Boy,
Yeah.
But no, I think that was a Blue Nose Audio production, and I applaud that whole team for being able to put that together because that can't have been easy with that many people. But I it seemed to have been seamless. So I don't know, on the back end how that worked for them if they were cursing everybody and like just or if they were just like this was easy, but it seemed pretty easy. Everybody, and that the group of narrators they got were pros, so half the battle is done right there in the casting.
It was like I loved listening to the series.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that.
It was fantastic. I'm looking in Audible and
tell me, what do I got coming
Audible,
up?
There's 433 results with your name.
For which name, Carly or CJ?
CJ.
Because I think
didn't even look up Carly.
I think Carly has like over 600. Yeah, so I've got like I got quite a few. Quite a few. I will tell you what I should have said, which is a Max Monroe title. Do you know what? I did that book like a year ago, and then I guess what happened was I kept seeing that and I was like, why isn't this book getting released? And I guess they sold it or something happened in terms of like the publishing of it. So it's only getting released now and they're going on this big tour. And they invited me to do a live, but didn't tell me that they were doing like a read along. And I was like, guys, give the girl a little bit of a heads up. I'm hoping, I know. So funny. Oh my God, we were peeing our pants. I'm hoping they're going to make it to, like the New York area, because if they do, I promised I would just show up whether they wanted me to or not. But that book that book was one of those like ones that kills you. It's like the full spectrum of emotions and heartbreak, and just so well done. So
Yeah.
I would recommend that one. I think that one they just released that recently. So
I haven't read one of their books in a long time, so thank you for bringing them back up. I need to listen to that.
yeah, I think you will not be disappointed. Do that one.
Yeah.
I think you will not be disappointed. Yeah. And then tell me. But
Okay.
but if you didn't love it, just like soften the parts that you didn't. You
Yeah.
can still tell me you didn't love it, but just like soften it. That's all.
Got it.
Well, will we see you at any signings? I know we've talked about a couple
Great
that
question.
you've been at.
Totally. I will. But I don't even know if I said any specific names. I am going to Beachside Book Fest in Fort Lauderdale in May. And I don't know many of those authors. I think a lot of them are newer or don't have a lot in audio. So I'm looking forward to it because it'll be a whole range of people that I've never met before, which is always exciting. And there's some really great narrators that are going. So I'm excited to hang out with my friends because that's basically what we use it for.
Yes,
It's like
of course.
an opportunity for us to hang out and meet one another and catch up and just sort of have a touchstone because that's always the sweetest. And then I have I'm doing I think it's called Spicy. It's in Chula Vista, but it's not until 2026. So it's hard for me to keep track of that. I should be so far in the future. I have that one in Chula Vista, which is outside of San Diego in 2026, which is always exciting because that's such a spectacularly beautiful part of the world. Oh my goodness. And do I have anything else? Oh, I have Indies Invade Philly.
Okay.
In the fall. And there may be a couple of other. I don't know. I don't know if any some I were told, but I don't think they've officially announced yet.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay.
So what is a great way for readers, listeners to connect with you?
I love hearing from listeners. So please reach out. I am probably most active on Instagram, Carly Robins Narrator. It does say in my profile #CJ Bloom. So you can type that in as well to find me. But that's probably the like home base for everything. TikTok still terrifies me. People are so good at it. They do a lot of like live readings and things or just people in general who just have like consistent content. I am envious that they're able to do that. I am not that way, but I will randomly post about things. And I do love to interact. And I certainly, if you tag me in something, I always love to see that. And I love to hear people's thoughts and, support my fellow narrators. I really enjoy doing that. So that's always a good time.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is the end of my questions on our list.
Look at us go.
Hard hitting here, you guys. Hard hitting.
All right. Well, we'll wrap this up and then we'll say our goodbyes after we say goodbye officially to everybody else out there. So, so thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure to get to hang out with you this morning.
Yeah.
It's afternoon for you, but morning for us. But thank you so much. And thanks to everybody out there for watching. We'll see you in the next video.